Tsukasa is a quiet and reserved boy who wakes up trapped in a morgue and doesn't remember who he is. Mimiru and Bear, he explores the game in an attempt to log out and return to the real world. Tsukasa wakes up in a dungeon within the MMORPG known as The World. He is unable to remember how he got there. Mimiru, a cheerful character, meets him and is immediately curious about Tsukasa, but he teleports and leaves the dungeon. Outside, he meets a group who identify as the 13th Squadron of the Crimson Knights, who claim they weren't looking for a fight and only wanted to ensure the safety and smooth running of the world. They question him about a mocap player he had been seen with who was suspected to be a tweak character. Still distorted, he teleports away and is met by Mimiru again. She offers him assistance and asks if he is okay. However, Tsukasa is still mistrustful of others and reluctant to engage. He soon realizes he is unable to log out, so he wanders about searching for answers. After wandering, he takes a break at a small lake where he meets Bear, a more experienced player, who offers help, but he immediately teleports again. As the Crimson Knight is speaking to his superior, he notices Tsukasa, who immediately sways for his signature move and teleports again. He later meets Mimiru, who scolds him for his attitude earlier. She then leaves him alone. Back in the dungeon where he first woke up, he tries to remember what had happened the last time he had been there, and he recalls the cat-faced character. Reluctantly, he opens the treasure chest and a stone slab floats. Just then, the Crimson Knight finds him and there is a fight which ends up revealing that he had unlocked some kind of monster that kills the knight. He reads the inscription on the monster, which states, "As long as we walk together, I shall protect you." Tsukasa leaves the dungeon and sits by himself in the town as he thinks of what to do. Tsukasa continues to struggle with his inability to log out of the game and his uncertain situation. Meanwhile, we are introduced to Mimiru. She meets Bear, an administrator in the game who is concerned about recent anomalies, including Tsukasa's inability to log out. There is a brief battle between BT and another player, the other one trying to steal a member address from BT, and shortly after kills off the BT. The Crimson Knights are now in panic over the death of their commander, who has not since then logged into the game, and have mobilized troops in order to be able to find Tsukasa. He soon realizes this and escapes off to nowhere. While wondering where to go next, just then, the mocap player appears before him. Bear is seen having a chat with another player, BT, whose character was previously killed off. She briefs about the details of the fight and then expresses concern again towards Tsukasa. Tsukasa expresses his frustrations of having nowhere to go and not be bothered by other players, but then the cat character takes him to a hidden space in the dungeon to match his description. Sora, the player who kills other players for their member address, was targeting Tsukasa closely behind before suddenly losing him. Bear, Mimiru, and BT discuss the matter of Tsukasa and all the things surrounding his situation. Just then, Tsukasa in the strange space hears a voice that asks him to contact Mimiru and to fear nothing because his guardian is with him, Mesha Aura. Just then, Sora collects information and plans to befriend Tsukasa instead, and Mimiru is contacted by Tsukasa for a meetup. She takes Bear with her. Reaching the meeting point, they start a conversation, and he realizes that the knight he had fought before had been found unconscious after the battle. Not long after, things take a rough turn as Tsukasa's guardian unleashes on them over a misunderstanding the two parties, and Bear steps up to protect himself and Mimiru. Subaru, the leader of the Crimson Knights, appears with the commander, who is finally back. A brief conversation is had, and the scene shifts to Bear and BT explaining to her the phenomenon that happened earlier and how he believed that Tsukasa was now above the system of the game. BT then suggests it to be related to the Key of the Twilight, a legendary item rumored to grant extraordinary powers and potentially affect the game world itself. Subaru goes out to see Sora for an exchange of information about Tsukasa, and he also mentions the Key of Twilight. Subaru immediately walks away because she didn't believe in the credibility of Sora's information. Mimiru sits in the dungeon where she met Tsukasa, trying to pick up clues about his whereabouts like an amnesia have struck Sherlock Holmes. Before Bear joins her, the two have a conversation before Mimiru departs. Tsukasa is seen in the strange space. He touched the floating girl above the bed in the space and had a flashback of the real world. Just then, the strange voice tells him to follow his wishes and do whatever he likes and add color to the figure, but he is hesitant. Mimiru journeys to grow stronger, and then Subaru invites Sora over to her town, and the Knight Commander expresses his concern. She reveals her intention on the matter, leaving him to accept the stance of his superior. Mimiru and Bear meet up once again, and she reveals to him that Tsukasa had contacted her again, but to prevent a conflict like last time, she wanted him to go in her place. Bear agrees and goes to see him, excited, expecting Mimiru. He shows a bit of disappointment, but still shares the news that he now had control of the Guardian and everything was fine. Bear, unable to share his sentiments, lets his emotion ride and causing Tsukasa to exit the conversation. following which Mimiru shows up and he explains the development and suggests that they talk to Crimson Knights. Not much later, the group gathers with the Subaru, the commander, Sora, BT, Mimiru, and Bear as they share information and assign tasks to be able to solve the puzzles of the world. Mimiru walks by the town, noticing that rumors had spread fast about Tsukasa. Subaru and the commander alongside Bear stand on the street, Subaru telling the others of her findings. And then realizing that Tsukasa has been logged into the game for over 10 years, they all make a curious attempt to ponder on what he has been doing in all that time. Tsukasa in the strange space is curious about what happens if he dies. The girl floating about the bed, he and the strange voice discuss, and he gets a flashback now believing the voice to be his mother. Mimiru sits alone and is later joined by BT, who informs her that Bear was unable to come and had asked BT to help deliver the message. She notices her concern for Tsukasa. Just then, Mimiru gets a message from Sora and BT pushes for them to meet with him in the forest. They see Sora at the top of a tree, as usual a friend in high places. They discuss among themselves, with Sora believing that Tsukasa didn't yet have the key of Twilight. BT logged out of the game and Sora then takes Mimiru to the dungeon. Subaru and the commander are seen drawing their straws as she concludes to him that the case cannot just be handled with their abilities alone, and she decided to ask for help from another player. As they were talking, Sora comes out from nowhere and they hatches a crazy plan with Subaru and the commander and other to capture Tsukasa. Mimiru finds Bear in the forest and voices her complaint about the last time. She curiously asks why he wanted to meet in the forest, and after satisfying her curiosity, they went to the dungeon where he told Mimiru that he had found a person called Tsukasa in the real world, but wasn't sure if it was the character Tsukasa. They fight a giant monster while they talk. Subaru and the Knight Commander discuss the issue while the commander encourages his leader. Subaru explains her standpoint and enlightens the commander. Mimiru and Bear find Tsukasa in his hideout and asked about his identity, and after revealing he wasn't a girl, he expressed his disappointment. He teleported away, convinced that he hates them. Now they retreated. Shortly after, Tsukasa is attacked by several people together. Unleashing his guardian, he quickly overpowers them, but also as quickly loses control of the guardian once again. Subaru has now made Tsukasa a wanted player in the name of the Crimson Knights across all the servers in the game, the world. Tsukasa goes back to the hidden space and finds the girl floating to have added a little color. He wonders what this means for him. Tsukasa sits alone in a dungeon. Ever the loner, he meets Grim, who offers to help him, but his reluctance and mistrust teleports again. Parties have been forming to hunt Tsukasa, which is now popular in the world, as another player approaches Mimiru if she was interested in joining their party. Mimiru, who is very irritated at this point, snaps. Just then Bear shows up, but she doesn't calm down, but he is able to figure the reason of her behavior from this situation and asks for a little bit of time to figure the best course of action for them. Subaru notices something and leaves abruptly to attend to it. The scene shifts and we see BT running after Sora. She offers him a plan to lure Tsukasa out of hiding to capture him. Subaru and Grim get together, as he was the one who had previously messaged her. They catch up and she leaves. In the strange space, Tsukasa is staring at the floating girl curiously, and then frantically fighting the bushes. Then the cat character appears and calms. Subaru returns to town and meets the commander waiting for her. As he informs her Sora has news for her, she instinctively knows that he has found a way to lure Tsukasa out. BT invites Mimiru. Mimiru is both surprised and excited. BT feeds her story that is made up to make her inform Tsukasa to lure him out into a plain field, while Sora and the knight plan the means for the ambush. When Mimiru realizes, she tries to warn him, but it was too late. He was cornered, and they attack him, releasing his guardian. He fends them off, but then Subaru shows up along with Grim, and he is quickly overpowered and captured. Mimiru confronts BT about why she had used her as bait, but she manipulated the situation into making it seem like she was innocent. Bear mitigated the situation in order for it not to get too serious, and Mimiru decides to deal with her guilt by rescuing Tsukasa. Tsukasa and Subaru have a conversation, and she agrees to free him if he doesn't act recklessness. Just then, Mimiru had met with Sora to know where Tsukasa was being kept. She agreed to do whatever he wanted, and Sora went to where the Crimson Knights held Tsukasa and freed him, but they were blocked by Grim, who intended to stop them from leaving, but Sora signaled to him to leave and held Grim off in order to give Tsukasa time to escape. Mimiru apologizes to Tsukasa for letting him fall into an ambush, but he had no intention of believing her and didn't want to hear what she had to say. She tried to explain herself to make him hold on a bit, but he teleported and left. Sora returns to the scene and finds that Tsukasa was gone. He is angry because he wanted to ask him about something. He walks off from Mimiru. Subaru and the commander speak, bickering like an old married couple, only she's the commander and is the one always whining. She tells him she has a plan and that there should be no reissued warrant, and she felt Tsukasa was already a prisoner in the world, and the commander would understand when the time was right. Grim advises the commander to grow stronger as his current strength could not protect the leader Subaru. Mimiru licks her wound of the two losses of being played to capture Tsukasa and being hated by him. After she helped rescue him, she explains her frustration to Bear. He advises her on the matter. BT meets Mimiru and tells her that she checked the BTs as a new monster had surfaced, and it was the monster that Tsukasa controls. Subaru orders the commander to let the players know about it, not to engage the monsters that looked like that of Tsukasa, and be careful, and that the investigation of who Tsukasa was important in the flow of things. As such, they were not to make rash moves. Tsukasa gives up on going outside and doing anything anymore. Mimiru walks into the forest and meets BT and Bear. They have a conversation about the current situation, and Bear told them he had plans to investigate outside about who Tsukasa is, but all the while Mimiru was very upset, so she runs off on her own. She goes the chain gate and goes to the dungeon where she first met Tsukasa. While she left the dungeon after a while and noticed another player who had been at the gate when she was going to the dungeon.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
The player identified as a 20, and then after some convincing by a 20 to take a dungeon with her, Mimiru, who was already upset, felt like it was a good way to blow off steam. Even though she wasn't too comfortable with it, as a 20 was an inexperienced player who had only played for 2 weeks and chose a rather difficult dungeon. They approach the dungeon and get to quite a place before the A20 finally confessed to it being only a week she started playing. Angry, Mimiru left and went to the mountainside, sending a note to Bear, but BT shows up instead, and the both of them have a conversation that was both consoling and aggravating for Mimiru. She left and went into the town. Then she met with Subaru. The both of them discussed Tsukasa's case. She feigned apathy towards him, but the Crimson Knight leader showed how concerned she was on the matter, which helped them both realize that they might care more than they let on. The conversation ended, and they parted ways. Mimiru went back to the dungeon where she had left a 20 and saw her weak and healed her, and asked why. She continued the dungeon even though she didn't have the experience. After learning of a 20's resolve, they decided to continue the dungeon together and were able to defeat it together. After a few hardships, and they got the treasure, she left it to a 20 to be able to brag about later. With her friends and left with her self-conflict resolved, she sent a message to BT and Bear about finding Tsukasa. Mimiru sends a message to Tsukasa telling him she'll wait till he shows up, like begging your ex to take you back, and hopes he comes. She is greeted by BT, and shortly after Bear walks along. Also, he explained that he couldn't find much in the outside world, and that Mimiru's approach was not a bad one, and the tension seems to be relaxed as the others have made a stance. Bear tells BT they will need Sora for their next investigation, and Bit wonders if it will go smoothly considering Sora's nature. The Crimson Commander wants to reprimand Sora for his behavior of frantically disturbing players looking for Tsukasa, but Subaru does not grant him permission and was happy that at least the matters of monsters were dying down. Bear and BT feel there is a bigger thing at play, as the abilities shown by the Tsukasa are beyond the game. BT goes to meet Subaru and talks. She appears to have a plan that Subaru is also interested in. Mimiru has been waiting for long and bored. She sees a person who has a similar player gimmick to Tsukasa and ran, but it was a different person. After hours of waiting, Bear comes to tell her to get some sleep as he'd wait in her place so she wouldn't feel like anything passed. After trying to convince her and it not working, he leaves. BT and Grim meet to discuss things concerning Tsukasa and the world, while Sora joins Mimiru in waiting. BT proposes they find the power manipulating things behind the scene and their main issue of lacking leads, because the entity was stronger than the system, as she puts her idea to find the key of Twilight and find the entity so as to be able to save Tsukasa. Sora calls Mimiru foolish for not setting a time and simply waiting for him to come, as he could no longer take it. He decided that he would log out of the game for a while after leaving. Tsukasa gets a flashback and decides to go see Mimiru. Surprised that she had stayed all day, she promised to protect him, and he left, leaving an expression on Mimiru that everything was now fine between the two. The strange voice was relieved that Tsukasa knew nothing and felt it was an acceptable outcome for what was to come, as she had described it, the crash. BT tells Bear to accept the fact that the key of Twilight exists somewhere within the world, and that it was important in finding out what was wrong with the game. Bear reluctantly agrees. Tsukasa is lonely shocker and wonders when the floating girl will wake up or if something was wrong with her, but also thought it unlikely. Grim and BT begin their search of the key of Twilight, examining the first time she had first heard of it and how it was being related now, and how it had become a topic for hot debate among the players, and Grim saying how he had previously tried to find it along with the Knights long before, but turned up with nothing, which lead him to believe such a thing never existed. Tsukasa wanders off to an old castle and finds a girl looking for someone to take care of her pet for 3 days. As she was going on trip, he was reluctant. BT goes to Subaru to understand where the origin of finding the key of Twilight came from after an explanation of how the key is shredded in mystery. The explanation was also happening in 2 different locations at once, which adds to the mystery. While Subaru explained to BT, Bear also explained to Mimuru. Tsukasa, who had been reluctant but accepted the duty regardless, was now feeding the pet and wasn't doing a good job at that. The animal was already sick, but what he lacked in being a good pet owner, he made up for in being proactive and took the animal to get treated upon. Finding that a purple cherry is what would work best for the pet, he set out to find one. Bear and Mimuru decide to find the key of Twilight along with BT, and they iron out their various means of information before sending Mimuru out to get information from Sora about what he knows about the key of Twilight. He decides to give out information only if they let him join in for the search. After agreeing, he said they could trace the posts on the BBG through Helba. Mimuru relays all this to Bear and BT, and Bear seems to know who Helba is, explaining to BT and Mimuru that she is a genius hacker and player in the game. Bet meets up with Sora, who confirmed that he had spoken to Helba and she happened to know them who would get the information across. They also spoke about what happened if they find the item, Sora revealing that he only desires to find it and had no intention of keeping it, and that the Crimson Knights would want to keep it. Meanwhile, the pet animal died as Tsukasa was too late to bring the purple berry to the animal. Mimuru, who had seen him define when the owner came angry about her dead pet, he apologized and left there. Mimuru, curious as to why he granted such a request in the first place, asked, but he gave no answer and instead just asked why he was different and noticed how sad he was. Mimuru tries her best to console him. Bear is talking to another player who requested for help and wanted money sent to him later. He revealed that he was Bear's son. As they were in the middle of conversation, Tsukasa shows up and the son leaves. Tsukasa and Bear walk into the market while Bear asked if he was not bored having all those time to himself, and if he wouldn't rather find a mystical or legendary item than sit around idly. This causes Tsukasa to tag him selfish and leaves. He goes to the strange place, sad and tired. He throws question after question at the floating girl, hoping for answers about why he was the only one with his experiences. Bear stands as if hoping Tsukasa would return, but then Mimuru shows up before him and he discusses his earlier encounter with her about how he might have offended him for being too pushy. Asks if Mimuru would talk to him. She declined, of the opinion of not getting involved in the issues of the two is best. He asked what she and Tsukasa had planned on doing later, and she explained it would be a dungeon raid. As Bear was about to leave, she tells him she got a message from Helba and if he'd like to see it. BT and Bear take the post and try to interpret. She also notices that he's a bit different as well. Mimuru and A20 are taking another dungeon together, and while fighting monsters, A20 is curious to know if Mimuru was really friends with Tsukasa, as he was popular and she didn't expect he would hand with them. Mimuru defends him and A20 acknowledges her. Later, BT analyzes Bear and advises him on how to take care of himself. Tsukasa tries to meet up with Subaru and the Knight Commander begs him to stay away as his influence was bad for her. Grim seems to have a breakthrough in finding the key of the Twilight, and he and BT seem to have figured something major out from there. Tsukasa tries to meet Subaru and the both of them lock eyes. He then changed his mind and teleported away. He meets Mimuru. He scolds him for standing her up. He apologizes and they talk. Bear meets up with Subaru to speak to her about Tsukasa. She speaks calmly, to which also helps Bear. He takes her advice and goes to speak to Tsukasa. They resolve their earlier issue and just continue to talk while they hang out. Tsukasa is having fun with the floating grill, who is now a formed little girl. While they played and had fun, the little girl stabbed him and he woke up realizing it was all a bad dream. Mimuru appears through the gate, stretching and ready for adventure. She meets Bear, who got there and was waiting for her. The two set out to meet with Tsukasa, who came late to the meet. The three form a party to go through a dungeon challenge together. BT tells Sora about the sub-event that Tsukasa and the rest were practicing, and the quest started with a riddle, which Bear immediately got, impressing Mimuru as she didn't know it could be solved that fast. She made another guess at what his profession was and got it wrong. The trio commutine on their part through the sub-event. They soon reached the second event, and it was another riddle which Tsukasa got and got the prize at the chest. They proceeded, and Mimuru asked questions about his family, which caused a dampen in his mood. Without realizing this, she blabbed on about her parents and all. He dusted off as they reach the third event and take the third riddle. They quickly slove it as well, and Tsukasa expresses his feelings a bit about how adults are selfish. They reach the final stage of the and they fight. When Tsukasa tries to activate his guardian, Mimiru stops and tells they should work together, as always relying on the guardian is making him into one of the unfair adults. They win the final battle, and they each get a gold coin. All of these are happening while Sora watches from behind, praising Tsukasa, president of the Tsukasa fandom. Tsukasa goes back to the space, much relieved from the morning, and places the coin on the floating girl. Mimiru and Tsukasa have just completed a quest, and Tsukasa doesn't want the reward. Mimiru questions his lack of greed, and he affiliates the insignificance of the need for greed. As they were in a game, she probes further, asking about shops and food he likes. Time soon passes, and Mimiru has to log out. After logging out, Tsukasa, who was now alone, suddenly hears a bell ring and has a feeling of panic and return to his hidden space. Similarly, as Subaru hears the sound, she tells the Crimson Knight commander to message her by email if anyone came asking, regardless of who. Mimiru and Bear meet up, and Mimiru tells him about the conversation he and Tsukasa had just had, and he picks up hints from there and logs out. Tsukasa, upon reaching the hidden space, found swam covering the floating girl, and while he was trying to remove it and save her, the swarm tree, and he kept trying. During all this, the cat shows up and throws worm-like things on him and the floating girl, which causes him to have flashbacks once again. Bear divulges information about a patient in a hospital and several other details, revealing it to be Tsukasa. She questions him about why he tells her, but he simply replies that he didn't want to bear the burden alone and that she shouldn't tell any of the others, especially not Mimiru. She then tells him if he wasn't ready to take care of the child, he shouldn't look into the matter any further. The strange voice gave Tsukasa a kind of warning to not make him want to enjoy the idea of logging out. After Tsukasa responded in the tone that she wanted, the words and all suddenly disappeared. Grim and BT talk about the Key of Twilight, and she tells him about the condition of Tsukasa, which led Grim to telling Subaru. Tsukasa visits places that hold memories for himself around the game and hopes he can join the real world, but doesn't say anything out loud. Bear meets Subaru, and they both discuss, as she asked if she could help with bringing Tsukasa back to the real world after learning the truth from Grim. Bear confronts Tsukasa about wanting to find the Key of Twilight with them, as it was the main part of getting him back. He remembered the words of the strange voice and the resounding tone he had heard, and immediately ran back to the hidden space and talked to the floating girl. BT and Subaru try to decipher the code for the Key of Twilight, and then right after that, BT meets up with Bear, who is not happy that she shared the information. She immediately goes in defense, and the matter is resolved when she concludes that Mimiru will not find out. They talk about their objectives when they found the Key of Twilight. Bear points out that he doesn't believe that the key is an item, but rather maybe an object. They turned that their objectives for obtaining the item were different, and such were in opposing teams, and decided a little opposition was fun. Sora messages Mimiru and they meet up. They discuss the Key of Twilight as well, but then also mentions the condition Tsukasa is in, which makes her mad that Bear kept it from her. She ultimately gives up and offers to help. BT and Grim are back debating about the key not existing. After tossing ideas, Grim drops and leaves the thinking for BT, as he wasn't good at it. Tsukasa made his resolve to find the key and use it to open the eyes of the floating girl who is always asleep, and Bear and Mimiru agree to help him. Subaru tells Grim she wants the Key of Twilight, and he promises to offer it to her as a gift. It's giving Infinity Stones. Bear, Mimiru, and Tsukasa went to town to find Subaru, but she wasn't there. Instead, the Knight Commander answered the questions that they had. After confirming everything, Bear left, and Tsukasa didn't want to return yet, so he asked Mimiru to stay with him for a while. The two stay together quietly before saying a few things to each other.
Oh my god! Wow!
Big Teeth and Sora plan a mission among themselves and bid themselves farewell. Bear, who was summoned to the dungeon by an unknown character. BT and Grim discussed hidden factors of their theory, and BT found out that Grim had kept some knowledge from her. With the pieces that were hidden, they quickly get 3 places to start their search. All the different teams and factions gather ready to go, with Sora watching from behind, always the Shadow Warrior. With BT making the first move, a hidden passage opens, forming the beginning of their search. Grim and BT arrive at the castle and look around, surprised at its existence. Meanwhile, Bear and Mimir talk about how strong Tsukasa. As they do, they see him coming towards them on the steps below. They meet up and they teleport to the bitter fantasy mirror world to get the Twilight Key. As they arrive, they find that BT and Krim are also there. Inside the castle, Krim and BT realize that they are being followed by Sora. Bear, Tsukasa, and Mimir hurry on into the castle, and one of the steps collapses and Mimir almost falls through but is saved by Bear. He pulls her up and she lands romantically on him in trauma fashion, and they consider going back as they all feel something is wrong. However, they continue. BT and Krim keep going in order to avoid Sora until Krim stops to confront him. He tells BT to go on without him, and she hesitantly leaves as Krim and BT begin their fight. Now inside the castle, Tsukasa and the others find different doors glowing with bright colors. Tsukasa points them to one, stating that it's the right way because it gives off the most evil. They step in following his advice. BT is also deep inside the castle, and she discovers an unconscious old man suspended in a mesh of red skin like mold. She asks if he sent her a message, and he opens his eyes slowly. Later on, BT meets up with Tsukasa and his group, and she tells them to leave. They go forward instead and meet the same white-haired old man who speaks about being a good father and mumbles on about random things they don't understand. They all watch him, confused as they don't know what he's talking about. The whole castle begins to shake, causing them to hurriedly leave. On their way out, Maka appears and causes Bear to fall down through the steps into the abyss. Maka then shoots Tsukasa with an arrow from his guardian, causing him to scream and then fall down and be knocked out. Mimir screams in disbelief as Tsukasa goes down. Tsukasa is soon brought back from death in the world and appears at the bedside of the sleeping girl, not creepy at all. The voice welcomes him back, saying the same words she said before, that she is Tsukasa's ally and that they should stay together, away from the outside world. Tsukasa disagrees and wonders why he exists in the world. Sumeru appears in Mak Anu to tell Silver Knight not to worry about her and to handle most of the matters relating to the Crimson Knights. She then checks a field where she meets Tsukasa. Tsukasa does not like the fact that he is trapped and that even if he dies, he is resurrected in the world. He feels that since he is basically a hamster in a box and cannot escape, he isn't truly alive. Sumeru tells him he is indeed alive, and that she will be waiting for Tsukasa if he were to one day return to the real world. She also reassures him that he will eventually find the path he desires. Bear meets with BT to discuss where to go from here. There are 3 clues that may aid in finding the key of the Twilight, and they are all centered on the old man they met at the Upside Down Castle. Bear soon receives an email from Mimuru and goes to Dun Loreg to meet with her and Sumeru. Sumeru tells him about her encounter with Tsukasa earlier and is worried that Tsukasa may lose his self-awareness if he continues to encounter hardships, such as the one in which he died. Mimuru receives an email from Tsukasa saying that he can meet with them, so she takes Bear to go to him. Tsukasa seems to have no memory of the time he found out what the key of the Twilight was, but Bear stops Mimuru from pressing the issue. Tsukasa, bothered that he can't remember something so important, returns to his hidden area and falls asleep by the side of the sleeping girl. Crazily for the second time, BT looks out a window in a building overlooking a snowy field. At Hullgrand's Cathedral, Mimuru suggests to Tsukasa that they visit Shimokatazawa together when he's able to log out. Tsukasa demonstrates his consistent obliviousness to everything around him and claims to have no idea what Shimokatazawa is. Scared by these words, Mimuru tells Tsukasa that she has to leave. At Dun Loreg, she conveys her fears to BT, who responds coldly, telling her not to get too involved and that there is nothing she should do about it. She even poses the possibility that the player behind Tsukasa is just pretending to be able to feel pain in the world. In typical Mimura mode, she gets annoyed and leaves BT. BT later meets with Bear and criticizes him for being involved with Tsukasa. BT then leaves to meet with Sora. When Sora realizes that she doesn't have any information, he leaves her. BT later meets up with Krim, who believes BT called him to talk about the key of the Twilight. In reality, BT wanted to meet with him in the real world again. Krim, in true Playboy fashion, turns BT down, saying that although he enjoys having her as a partner in the world, he doesn't want to bring that relationship into the real world. BT says she understands, and Krim leaves her. Like a heartbroken princess, BT laments that she didn't understand anything at all. BT answers a call from Subaru, who wants to discuss Tsukasa with her. The request turns into a verbal attack by BT, who not only turns down Subaru's request, but also accuses her of being conceited. Just as BT receives a message from Bear, she is confronted by 2 newbies, and since she's such a princess, decides to help them out when they ask for help. As it turns out, the 2 are pairs. As they are about to kill her, Tsukasa appears in the dungeon by chance. The 2 players recognize Tsukasa and run off, saving BT. Tsukasa asks if BT was really willing to die just then. BT in turn asks Tsukasa what it feels like to die. Tsukasa explains his death and resurrection as a game of guess who. Someone covers his eyes, then lets go, leaving him with less of himself. BT feels is the same as her hatred of lettuce, which no one seems to find any fault with. She dislikes it because she dislikes it regardless. When Tsukasa asks if BT pities his situation, both of them laugh like opium-filled puppies and shrug off the thought. In the real world, Michiko, who probably wasn't the most popular kid in school, tears up an invitation to her high school reunion and logs back into the world, deciding to play BT, a little while longer. Subaru confronts Silver Knight about him lying to Bear, Mamoru, and Tsukasa about her unavailability. Silver Knight claims that Subaru associating with them would bring harm to her and all the Crimson Knights. Silver Knight also begins to mention that there are those within the ranks that have started rumors about Subaru. Subaru relates her fears to Krim, who tells her that the world is only a game and that she should play according to what she wants. Although Krim ultimately wants Subaru not to pay much mind to Silver Knight's words, he is worried that Silver Knight may go a step too far one day.
I'm so sick of this company.
Silver Knight reports to Subaru about the progress the Crimson Knights have made in locating the player killer of Carmine Gadelica. When he states that the Knights are willing to bind and interrogate the player, Subaru chides him like an overstepping child, stating that the Knights exist only to preserve order and back up auto-purification activities. Silver Knight complains that the Knights need more authority to maintain order. Subaru tells him that that is the job of system administrators. As soon as Subaru leaves the Knights to do as she wishes, they begin to display their disapproval. Silver Knight goes against Subaru's wishes and orders the Knights to make the player killer wanted throughout Carmina Gadelica, and that he is to be bound as soon as possible. Krim watches his actions from afar. Subaru arrives in Dun Loreg to meet with Mamoru and Bear and learns that Tsukasa's persistent amnesia has activated and he no longer remembers when he learned that he had found the key of the Twilight. Bear decides that Tsukasa is definitely linked to the key and that they should focus on learning more about the broken man they met at the Upside Down Castle. At this point, Subaru decides to leave them and meet with Tsukasa at a certain field. When Subaru returns to meet with the Crimson Knights, she learns of their disrespectful insubordination, and that they went against her orders and used force against various criminals. Angered, Subaru orders that Silver Knight be brought before her. As she gives the order, she receives an important email from CC Corp. Subaru once again confronts Silver Knight about his disobedience and is outraged that he had requested that CC Corp. and the Knight's authorization to view personal log data on all active members of the world. The request was denied on the grounds that the Crimson Knights are an unsanctioned organization of normal players. Subaru requests that Silver Knight return to the original ideals of the Knights, but he refuses and accuses Subaru of being afraid of fighting injustice. He and others feel that she has made an exception for Tsukasa, who is an illegal character, and that this is preventing her from doing her job properly. Having had enough of Silver Knight's words, Subaru disbands the Crimson Knights. As Subaru wanders aimlessly throughout the world, she recalls her first meeting with Krim, and how he taught her to be honest with herself, stand up for herself, and maintain a proper attitude when dealing with others. Prior to meeting with Krim, she would wait in the same field every day at the same time, hoping to be with others. One day, she and Krim are attacked by a group of peers. Subaru stands up to them and asks them to refrain from killing newbies. The peers scoff at her, asking her who she is to make such a request. Krim backs her up and replies, "You can call us the Crimson Knights." But Rimor and Subaru soon formed a guild of players who shared the same ideals and worked to help bring order to the world. At Hologrand's Cathedral, Subaru is met by Salu, a former knight that requests that she reform the Crimson Knights to go against the new organization led by Silver Knight. Subaru tells him that the Knights lost their way and that he should find his own path. Subaru then recalls the day Krim quit the Crimson Knights. Krim and Silver Knight cross blaze over a difference in ideals. Silver Knight chastised Krim for not being a model player, while Krim did not believe in taking their jobs so seriously. Krim airily said he quit right there, much to the shock of Silver Knight. Subaru believed that Krim played the role of a villain, because the Knights had become too large and powerful, but Krim tells her that he simply didn't enjoy playing the game as a member of the Crimson Knights. Subaru stops her daydreaming into the good old days for a while and meets Kachin, a player with the same avatar model as her. Kachin approaches her and begins chatting. She reveals her disdain for Subaru because players accuse her of copying Subaru's look in the Crimson Knights. Kachin then ends her friendly facade like a generic theater villain, removing their mask, and reveals her intention to kill Subaru or force her to retreat so she can humiliate her by posting a log of the conversation. Subaru, harnessing the power of friendship, remembers the strength Krim gave her and stands up to Kachin, refusing to play into her hands. Angered, Kachin attacks Subaru and leaves without finishing her off. Weakened from the attack, Subaru slowly makes her way to another area where she finds Tsukasa. Tsukasa is shocked to see her in her disheveled appearance and goes to her. Subaru asks Tsukasa why he was waiting in the area, to which he doesn't know but figured if he waited, he would meet her. She then tells him she was the one who was waiting and cries in his arms as he consoles her. It is shown that the player controlling Subaru is confined to a wheelchair and is also crying. Tsukasa then tells Subaru that he's right here with her. As Tsukasa and Subaru spend more time together, Mamoru, who is playing with Bear, laments like a whining child over the key of the Twilight and how distant everyone else has become. She is still determined to help Tsukasa find a way to log out and turns down Bear's offer to see the real Tsukasa, remembering her promise to shop at Shimokizawa when Tsukasa is able to. Meanwhile, Sora gets BT to aid him in recruiting the Wandering Silver Knight as a pawn, forming an unlikely alliance between the three. BT ultimately gets Silver Knight to comply by telling him that gaining the key of the Twilight may restore the Crimson Knights to glory. At Hull Grand's Cathedral, Subaru informs Bear about the time she has spent with Tsukasa. Bear approves of her actions, believing that their relationship will help Tsukasa leave the world. Perhaps motivated by Subaru and Mamoru, Bear decides to call Mamoru, BT, and Krim together to discuss the renewal of the search for the key of the Twilight. Having spent much time with Subaru, Tsukasa decides to bring her to see Aura in Morgana's hidden field. However, Aura is missing from her bed. Everyone called by Bear agrees to once again search for information about the key of the Twilight. Unbeknownst to them, BT is also working with Sora, who plans to use Silver Knight and their remaining forces, loyal to him to beat Bear's group in finding the key. After their meeting, Mamoru encounters Subaru, who regrets escaping the field when Morgana arrives. Meanwhile, Morgana punishes Tsukasa for bringing Subaru. She coldly tells Tsukasa that she no longer has any use for him, and data drains him over Aura's bed, leaving him a mentally broken shell. Subaru meets up with Bear and Mamoru to discuss a way to find Tsukasa, who Subaru believes is still trapped in Morgana's field. In the end, no progress is made, but Subaru is still certain that there is a way to Tsukasa. Sora, BT, and Silver Knight have another meeting and decide that they have no choice but to wait for Tsukasa to act since Bear's group has no new information. As BT gates out, Sora decides to go off on his own and investigate a rumor. BT meets with Subaru, who speaks from the heart that all she desires in the game is to meet with Tsukasa again. She then asks BT to give her any information on Tsukasa as soon as possible. BT is affected by Subaru's words, realizing that the world of Tsukasa is more than just a game to Subaru. Krim meets with Bear and tells him of a monster that is impossible to defeat. The monster is in fact not a mere rumor, as Krim himself had encountered one. Meanwhile, Tsukasa is still affected by Morgana's data drain, spends all his time in Morgana's field, sitting in it dazed like a retired old veteran. Maka shows up and is surprised when the dazed Tsukasa gives her aromatic grass as a gift. Confused by the act, Matcha gates out after taking another worried glance at Tsukasa. At Hologrand's Cathedral, Bear meets with Subaru and Mamoru and tells them that they will find the answers they are looking for by meeting with the Broken Man once again. Bear explains that the Broken Man is an AI left behind by the genius programmer Harold Horwick. To find the AI Harold, Bear decides to ask Helba for help. Morgana's new field is shown. At the focus of the field is Aura, apparently corrupted and frozen by Morgana. Upon seeing the corrupted Aura, Maka displays a look of shock and anger. Maka also wishes to know why Tsukasa isn't present. Morgana tells Matcha that Tsukasa is unnecessary and that she should not worry about Aura. She promises that she, Matcha, and Aura will live in a world where no one will bother them. Bear meets with Helba, who apparently accepted Bear's request from the BDS in a dungeon. Bear, Mamoru, and Subaru leave to meet with the AI Herald without BT, who decided not to join them. To meet with the AI Herald, Bear leads them to a dungeon, following the directions of Helba. In the dungeon, Bear explains what he learned from Helba. The Herald had left some hope or unfulfilled wish in the world, and that he left copies of himself to oversee its completion, making himself a being that was everywhere in the world but not in any one place. Meanwhile, Sora goads Silver Knight into joining him to search for the monster that cannot be defeated and defeat it. He tempts the knight with the possibility of becoming a legendary player. Back in the dungeon, Mamoru recalls that this is exactly the same dungeon she first met Tsukasa in. Tsukasa himself is still under the effects of Morgana's data drain and is sitting in a daze near Aura's bed. Deeper in the dungeon, Bear's party encounters a data bug. Subaru falls while attempting to escape, but before the data bug attacks her, she is saved by Balmung, who follows them into the dungeon. Balmung, feeling like a her from times of old, tells the three to move ahead while he keeps the data bug busy. Bear, Subaru, and Mamoru meet the AI Herald. Sora and Silver Knight soon hear cries of help and follow the voices to find a data bug. Sora PKs the two PCs, much to Silver Knight's disapproval, and proceeds to battle the data bug. At the bottom of the dungeon, the three find the Helba gate leading to an AI Herald. At first, the AI repeats the same message he told previously like a broken recorder set on loop, but Mamoru's insistence that he speak about the girl breaks the infinite cycle, and the AI Herald asks if they have met Aura. Having decided that the data bug cannot be defeated, Sora escapes battle and leaves the bug to a confused Silver Knight. Silver Knight, not feeling very knight-like, flees as well and is met by Krim. The Eye Herald finally explains that he created both Aura and a being designed to awaken. Aura. Aura was meant to be a daughter, to be the proof that he loved a certain person. The other being he created warped his feelings and is trying to warp Aura. He warns that the current warped Aura must not be awakened, but that there also may be hope if the correct Aura can be awakened. From the Ai's words, Subaru and Bear come to the conclusion that Tsukasa was a tool used to warp Aura and give birth to her. Before more progress can be made, Morgana, the omnipresent being that Herald created, interrupts the conversation and deletes both the Eye Herald and his field, forcing Bear, Mimiru, and Subaru to flee. Sora finds Morgana's hidden area by grabbing Matcha. At Mac Anu, Krim consoles Silver Knight, who is still feeling lost. Krim asks why he is still in the world, then tells him that he does what he should do. He says that the world is a game, and that he should enjoy it. Having escaped by the skin of their virtual teeth, Bear, Mimiru, and Subaru go over what they have learned from the Eye Herald. They decide that their enemy has been using Tsukasa to warp Aura and that they should give birth to the correct Aura. Mimiru is excited, but Bear explains that their enemy is omnipresent and that they have no way to fight her. Subaru believes that Tsukasa is the only factor on their side and that he is the key to awakening the true Aura. Somehow, Subaru's yearning for Tsukasa reaches his ears and snaps him out of his daze. Sora, feeling down that he had to escape from the data bug, spots Maka and grabs onto her at the exact moment she decides to return to Morgana's area. There, Sora spots and takes interest in the warped Aura. Helba sends emails to Bear, Mimiru, Subaru, Krim, BT, Sora, and Tsukasa, informing them to come to Screaming Wind Sand's Fate Castle. All except Tsukasa, who doesn't know Helba, come to the field, but not without reconfirming their intention to follow through. Bear and BT meet in a forest and discuss the upcoming battle and ask why the other one is fighting. Subaru and Krim meet each other in the cathedral, where Subaru shows Krim the strength she has gained to help Tsukasa. Krim, proud of the progress Subaru has made, urges her to move on while he waits for Tsukasa in the cathedral. At the meeting place, Sora and Mimiru face off due to their differences. Just as Sora pins Mimiru down, Bear and BT appear, forcing Sora to retreat and hint that he has joined Morgana. Meanwhile, Tsukasa gates directly into the cathedral, where he is met by Krim. The disheveled Tsukasa is at first fearful, but Krim gives him the same advice on confidence he once gave to Subaru. Krim also tells Tsukasa about the player behind Subaru. Subaru was once as naive and weak-willed as Tsukasa, but she took responsibility for herself in order to truly enjoy the world, the one place she was capable of walking around freely. Krim tells Tsukasa to take responsibility and change his surroundings rather than accepting everything around him even if he dislikes it. With those words, Krim leaves Tsukasa to join with the others. The entire party, just before entering the Helba gate, Silver Knight, who had also apparently received an email from Helba, makes an unexpected appearance and joins the others shortly before a Helba gate appears. To encourage the others, Krim quotes Ryu Sakuma's novel Ammon shortly before they enter the gate to Net Slum. As the group passes through the gate, Subaru stays behind to wait for Tsukasa, who is shown to still be inside the cathedral, upset and indecisive. All the main players gate into Net Slum, which is full of what appears to be failed copies of Tsukasa. Tsukasa himself gates into the area Subaru is waiting for him, and the two gate into Net Slum together. With everyone together in the same place, Helba appears and introduces them to Net Slum. She explains that her program picked up the copies of Tsukasa 6 months prior. Apparently, their enemy was unable to make a true clone of Tsukasa and trapped the original inside the game instead. Silver Knight begins attacking the bad data clones to clean up the area, but is stopped by Bear so as not to hurt Tsukasa's feelings if he shows up. Shortly, Tsukasa does show up with Subaru and is asked why he was chosen for the enemy's plan. He responds that he doesn't know and runs off. Subaru follows Tsukasa, who is scared knowing that many of his memories were artificial, ones created for him. He acknowledges that he may in fact be a girl in the real world, but that he is unsure which of his memories are real and which are constructed. Subaru comforts him, and again expresses her wish to see him in outside the world regardless. Meanwhile, Helba explains the true nature of the enemy and its goals. The enemy is an omnipresent being within the world. For some reason, Aura is linked to Tsukasa. When Tsukasa is positive, she grows in the desired direction, but when he is negative, Aura's growth is warped. The enemy's goal is to keep Tsukasa negative, permanently halting Aura's birth. Thus, the ultimate goal to fight the omnipresent being is to give birth to the correct Aura. In Morgana's area, Sora demands to know Morgana's goals. Morgana responds, saying she desires deeper despair for Tsukasa and asks Sora what he desired. Sora merely replies something interesting. Morgana offers to give him a guardian, but Sora refuses, injuring Morgana. When Sora escapes, Morgana calls Matcha, who is still holding the aromatic grass given by Tsukasa. Annoyed, Morgana deletes the grass and commands her to pursue Tsukasa. At Net Slum, the players plan for the coming battle. Hellboy will be monitoring from afar while the others fight. Bear explains that since the only reason Tsukasa is even with them now is because of Subaru, the enemy will likely attack her first. As they discuss how they should handle her and Tsukasa, Maka appears and summons a guardian to attack Subaru. Krim, Mimiru, and Silver Knight come to their aid and urge Tsukasa to take Subaru and run. Although it is held back for a while, the guardian pursues and catches up to Subaru and Tsukasa. Just when it seems they are cornered, Tsukasa's guardian appears to protect them. Both guardians end up data draining each other, and they both disappear. The other players appear to congratulate Tsukasa and ask what he wants to do. Tsukasa replies that he wants to log out and return to the real world. Maka returns to Morgana's area and is pleased to see that Aura seems to be recovering, but Morgana screams in anguish knowing that her plan is falling apart. Morgana's screams of anger are heard by Tsukasa, and Bear asks if they should leave. The others agree and head to Makanu. BT prepares for the battle while the others move on to Hullgrand's Cathedral. Before she can proceed, however, Sora PKs her after being unable to get the location of the others from her. At the cathedral, Bear and Krim stand guard while the others head inside. As the two chat, Krim laments that he won't be able to see the entire matter of the hidden force of the world to the end, but is satisfied if he knows that others will rise up to finish what they started.
We tired of playing with your ass, nigga.
BT soon appears and informs them that Sora is working for the enemy. Inside the cathedral, Tsukasa discusses his future and the reason he was chosen by Morgana with Subaru. Subaru reassures him that they will resolve things. Bear, who has switched places with BT, approaches Tsukasa and has a private talk with him. He offers to become his legal guardian in the real world, deciding that he's finally willing to take full care of him. He also acknowledges that doing so would provide him with a second chance to be a proper father. Outside, Sora appears to settle his score with Krim. BT is unable to help as Silver Knight calls for reinforcements. Inside the cathedral, a guardian has appeared to attack the group. Meanwhile, at the old area where Aura once slept, Maka looks at the bed and a shred of aromatic grass, wondering what she must do. When Morgana calls for her, Maka displays a look of discontent. Krim and Sora face off at the roof of the cathedral, while the others challenge the attacking guardian. As Krim and Sora cross blades, Krim lectures Sora and explains that although Sora's stats are about equal to his, he is stronger because Sora lacks passion. Inside the cathedral, Subaru gives Tsukasa the choice to leave, so Tsukasa asks Mimiru to cover their escape. However, witnessing the strength of the others, Tsukasa decides to stay behind and help fight. Together, they manage to defeat the Guardian. Meanwhile, Krim knocks Sora off the cathedral and forces him to retreat. Although the Guardian is defeated, 3 more take its place. Tsukasa boldly tells the others to leave while he takes on the Guardians himself. Although these resolve to battle him himself, Maka soon appears, holding a blade of aromatic grass with her. Upon seeing Tsukasa, the blade of grass grows. Pleased, Maka resolves to take the place of Tsukasa as Mukcha, and the 3 Guardians simultaneously data drain each other. Although Mukcha and the 3 Guardians disappeared, Tsukasa, Subaru, and Mimiru are all warped to a different area by Morgana. Tsukasa, Mimiru, and Subaru awaken in a strange new field while the others wonder what has happened to them. They agree that although they have discovered several secret areas, there are likely many more they don't know about, and that the 3 are likely in enemy territory. Krim sees it as them being right next door to the final boss. In the new area, the 3 each encounter dark versions of each other. Although they're fake, Tsukasa, Mimiru, and Subaru try to discourage them and incur their hatred. They don't fall for the enemy's tricks and eventually find each other. The reunion is cut short as they are warped to Morgana's area, where she and the sleeping Aura await. Morgana tries once more to goad Tsukasa into remaining with her, but he decides to disobey her and awaken Aura. After a heated argument about what awaits him outside, Tsukasa stands firm, desiring to leave the game and return to his world. With those words, Aura finally awakens. The angered Morgana threatens them, but Sora unexpectedly appears, telling them to escape. Sora stays behind to tell her that he is betraying her, but Morgana blocks his escape and summons Skeeth to data drain him. She then commands Skeeth to go after Aura. The 3 players, with Aura and Tao, gate into Net Slum, where the others await. Bear informs Helba that Aura has been awakened just as Skeeth appears in front of them. Helba realizes that the new opponent is far more powerful than anything they fought before, so she shuts down Netslum's server. In the real world, Tsukasa's player and Shoji leaves the hospital and soon meets with Subaru's player, Mariko Misano. Mariko welcomes her back to the real world and the two happily approach each other. The series ends with Morgana repeating the same words she said at the beginning of the series. "I've been waiting for you for such a long time. I need you just as you need me."